Okay, so I was going to start my talk by saying that I'm the only thing that's keeping you from the bar. So I'm going to make it quick, and I'm going to talk about strangers. And this is my talk, okay? I've been coming to TED since 1993, and this is my first time on the stage. So, okay. And performance anxiety doesn't begin to explain. I mean, really, it doesn't begin. And so I was going to talk about strangers and how they make your experience is much better, and about how they can make you more intuitive and how you can listen to them. And I know that what makes a great TED Talk, or what makes a great talk, is a story. And so I've been structuring this. I don't know, I've been working on this for about 8 weeks. And Julian called and said, I want you to talk to the guy in Budapest, and he'll make this really great slide for you. And so I talked to Bruno, who works for TED, and I said, help me make this. And he goes, oh, fine, I'll do it. And I get back this great outline that's like really orderly and Swiss, and not me. So then I send it to my friend Mark down in Atlanta. And there's a whole part about intuition, like you think, okay, women are intuitive and men are not intuitive. And he goes, well, what about gay men? I go, okay, gay men are intuitive. So then this whole thing becomes about gay men and intuition. And I'm like, oh, and it just goes from bad to worse. And I'm struggling and struggling. And then I've got no less than 32 versions of it on this, on my little thing. And so what I would do is I would listen to it at night. I would listen to myself talking, a version that I hated. And so I'd do a new version the next day, or I'd send out an email to. So my friend Jacqueline says, Sonny, let me look at it, I'll make it good. That was 2 nights ago. And then Nathan in California says, I'll do the slides, it will be great, I promise, it'll be wonderful. And I'm like, no. And even last night at the speaker's dinner, people were like, oh, I'm so glad you're speaking, I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. And Julian saying, you know, it'll be really wonderful, Sonny. I know I can trust you, it'll be great. And all along I'm thinking, oh no, man, it's so bad. Because I couldn't think of one story. I had this whole structure, and it was moving through, and I couldn't make it work. I'm gonna set this down for a minute, but there is one great moment in here. So this past weekend, I go up to Providence to see my 2 daughters. And I'm like, okay, you guys, you totally have to deliver for me. We're gonna work on this talk, right? And they say, oh yeah, Mom, sure, okay. So we spent 8 hours on Saturday on this. And it looks really good, but it reads kind of like a term paper, like a really good one in the modern media and culture theory course. And so when I get to the part about how, you know, you're always trying to recreate strangers in your life, and going back to college, or going back to travel, you know, those great travel stories when you don't really, you know, you're on a URL pass, and so you're meeting strangers and how great it is. And then there's always that time with experimental drugs. So I'm looking at Lola going, oh yeah, experimental. So as I'm practicing this, and poor Sophia, my long-suffering assistant, who's been, you know, all the way through this with me, and she said, you know, Sonny, did you ever do drugs? And I was like, no, actually I didn't. She goes, you know, it doesn't sound like you did. You gotta take that part out, right? Just like it didn't sound like it because it wasn't me. So then I knew that it was really getting bad when I saw this poster on 14th Street, which is the missing unicorn, right? And I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. This is how you meet strangers. I'll put this in my talk. And I'm thinking, oh man, it is so bad that I'm actually trying to shove everything I possibly can into this talk. And that what the real talk was that happened this morning was when Sophia looked at me and she said, you know, it's still really bad. And I said, I know it's really bad because I'm trying to weave all these things. I'm trying to be really smart. I'm trying to sound really amazing. I'm trying to have a talk that's worthy of TED, particularly when people say, oh God, I know it's gonna be good. Sonny, you're gonna be wonderful. And thinking, really? And then thinking, no, I know I'm not gonna be wonderful. And how frustrating is that? To wanna say something that's really great and to feel this unbelievable pressure. Now, I don't know quite how it happened. I think part of it's because it's being taped, thank you. Part of it's because the bar gets raised all the time, but that it's become this, you know, people are up here just shaking and quaking, right? And certainly I've been doing that for weeks. And I'm wondering, you know, why does it have to be this way? What are we putting on ourselves to make it this way? Why can't we just stand up and tell our story? Because we want it to be amazing. We've got these Olympian standards. We've got this whole sense of we have to leave behind some extraordinary impression. We have to be able to say something every time we open our mouth, something really amazing. And I couldn't think of one amazing thing. And worse, I couldn't think of a story that would tie it together that was my story. I couldn't think of a story that was one that made me feel like it was worthy of telling people, especially people that I didn't know. So I was going to talk about listening and how important that is and how that's the way that you really connect with people. But all the while I'm telling the story, I'm walking around with these headphones and listening to myself telling this terrible talk that doesn't flow, that doesn't ring true, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm missing everything around me that's usually the thing that makes it easy for me to really connect with people. So and this week I've been totally stressed. Oh, God, I've got this talk to do, and I've got all these board meetings, and I've got all this stuff to do. And I'm missing it all because I'm totally obsessed with being literally here right now. And then when people would say, oh, you're going to be great. I know you're going to be great. And we all know when you're great and when you're not great. And when you've got somebody to say that maybe people want to listen to or maybe they don't want to listen to. But I knew that what I was going to say, it wasn't worth listening to. So what do you do when you are a connector? And what do you do when everybody thinks that you are their best friend and you really actually feel like you're everyone's best friend? I mean, when you meet somebody and then you bring them into your life and it really feels like they're close to you. And how do you do that? Now I'm actually kind of backing into what I was going to say. It's about listening, and I think one of the things that my kids said last weekend when we were turning this term paper into a theory paper was that I used to always say, and I really believe, and I'm really committed to this idea of, there's nothing I can't hear. And that was, for me, the real key to listening, which was not there's nothing I can't listen to or there's nothing you can't tell me, but there's nothing that I can't hear. Because if I make that commitment, then I can't talk over you. I can't go, oh, yeah, really? I don't know. I can't in any way do anything other than keep my ears open and really not in any way judge you. Now, that's really hard. It's really hard because I figured that, being up on stage here, you guys were going to judge me. And I'm thinking, here I am saying that the whole key to being able to really connect with people and to build a kind of authentic trust with people is to be able to not judge. And here I am judging myself so completely and just assuming that I'd be standing in front of a group of people who were going to be judging in a way that I couldn't bear to think about being judged. But I do know that when you make that commitment to there's nothing I can't hear, then it really changes the dynamics. It changes the dynamics of every interaction that you have because people feel honored. And most of the time, we're not listening. I mean, let's face it, right? Most of the time, we're doing something else. We've got our devices going. When you're on a conference call, you're doing your emails. You're doing something else, and that's fine because most of the time, maybe things aren't worth listening to. But if you really want to create an important and a really enduring kind of a relationship, then you do have to give full attention. And with me, one of the things that I have to do when I'm really thinking hard and full attention is I close my eyes. I was also doing that a lot when I was practicing because I kept thinking, if I close my eyes, maybe everyone will go away. But I have to close my eyes a lot because sometimes there's too much stimulation. There's too much visual stimulation, so I can't really think how things are connected. I can't really think about who you should know or who would be interesting for you or hear what you're saying and not assume I'm going to know what you're going to say to me or what I'm going to hear, but go with you each step along the way and then imagine who can take you that next step because that's what's interesting to me. I'm always interested in that next step. I'm interested in that leap. Maybe it's forward, maybe it's to the side. I'm interested in going there with you. And that stuff gets pretty interesting because I think that's way out on the edges. That's that boundary work. That's the stuff where you jump from one discipline to another. Or in my case, where I decided that this magician that I'd met, who I thought was totally great, had to know this microbiologist because somehow they might be able to conjure up some kind of a new cell. And they did, actually. I mean, they're still working on it. But, and I remember thinking, why do I do this? And it's not that I do it, it's that I can't help but do it. Because it seems like the possibilities are far outweigh the possible costs, right? So the downside of doing something like that, or theoretically putting yourself out on a limb, the downside of that is what? That there's no magic? That they don't like each other? That nothing happens? Well, I don't really care. That doesn't really matter, because if there's even a slight possibility that some magic could happen somewhere, 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 or whatever, some kind of wacky thing, then that's a risk I'm willing to take. I mean, that seems worthwhile, because we're all looking for magic all the time. We're looking for it everywhere all around us. Oh, God, I'm backing back into my talk again. But I think that place about where you go and where you look for magic is that place about where when you're listening to somebody, you're listening for this, you're listening for feeling, you're listening for reaction, you're listening for something it's probably intuition. I believe me, I've studied so much about intuition. In the last 8 weeks, I could give you many, many definitions of it. But I think the thing about intuition that's so interesting is that we all have voices in our heads, right? And when we get really busy or when we don't like what they're saying, we drown them out as much as we can. And we all have these feelings in our gut. And those are the things that keep us up at night. And those are the things that no matter how hard you try to ignore them, they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And those are the bits that if you don't listen to them, if you don't give them a little place to grow, a quiet place to grow and take root, and you keep talking over them or you keep ignoring them, you know what, then you're not going to be able to hear them anymore. And I think the most interesting things that you can do is hear those voices and acknowledge those feelings, because that's this language of intuition. And when you hear those and they can take root, that's a little bit when magic happens. Because that's not when you're thinking, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do this amazing talk, I've got to leave behind a really great impression, I've got to work really hard at it, and I've got to force it, and I've got to keep forcing it, and no, it just never came. It really didn't ever come. Whereas when you listen to that part of you that's just saying, oh, this is all wrong, I can't do this, I can't stand in front of you, and make what I think is sort of an intellectual argument when I'm talking about something that's so much more emotional and more intuitive. So I didn't, I threw it away. And as I stand here, I was going to end with something, so I'm going to end with that now, because it's one of my favorite quotes. And I first learned of it from a really wise man named Nico Cantor, whom I adore. He's one of the wisest men I know, who's a poet, as well as a very successful businessman. It's always nice when people have more than one single story. And it's a Montesquieu quote, and it is, "Great men feel what good men merely know." And I really do believe that we want to move forward and operate from a place that feels right, that feels good. There's lots of feeling on the stage here. And I know that I would so much rather be great with feeling than not. So thank you. Okay. And the unicorn.